and welcome back to Scarred for Life, the podcast where we open up old wounds by looking back at the films that scared us as kids. I'm Terry.
And I'm Mary Beth.
And each episode, our special guests bring with them a movie that traumatized them as a child.
This week, our guests are Kentucker Audley and Albert Birney, the co-writers and co-directors of Strawberry Mansion, which just had its release on DVD and Blu Ray. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having us. We're excited to chat. Scars.
Yeah. Happy to open these old wounds and, get all traumatized again.
Yeah, and what a great inspired pick, and for a lot of reasons, and I can't wait to get into that. But before we do, let's take it back to the beginning. How did you both get introduced to horror and like genre pictures?
Yeah, for me, it was a couple things. The first one was a very formative memory. Probably one of my earliest memories that I can still like really feel the moment. I was like 4 years old. At my friend's house. I went upstairs to the bathroom and his older sister was watching a movie in the parents' bedroom with some friends. And I stood in the doorway and it was the iconic scene in Nightmare on Elm Street when Johnny Depp gets swallowed by the bed and the blood comes out. Okay. So that moment I was standing there and I couldn't look away, but I was also like terrified. I was like, this is something I should not be seeing. And that kind of set me on my journey. I slowly started renting the movies myself, The Nightmare on Elm Street. I'd get them from my local video store. And Freddy Krueger, it's funny because he's like a horror icon, but he was huge, like with kids. I think maybe because he had a little bit, especially in the later films, he was a little bit funnier, funny. Mm-hmm. He had some humor to him. So as a kid, I dressed as him for Halloween when I was, like 9 years old. I had the fake plastic glove and the fake head.
Me too.
Yeah, I wish I still had it. It's probably in my mom's basement somewhere. But I would say that Freddy Krueger, Nightmare on Elm Street kind of started me down the path. And, you go to the video store and you see, all the amazing Nightmare on Elm Street painted covers. And then those are next to other movies that you kind of pick up and start to explore. And I had a couple friends that we would, we just loved watching any horror movie, good or bad. If it was bad, it was almost better,
Yep.
You'd have more fun with it and it wasn't quite as scary. So you could kind of like laugh along with it. And then every once in a while you'd see like a really scary one like The Exorcist. And I'd be like, you know what? I'm going to not watch any horror movies for like a month or two. That one burned me a little bit too much, but so that was my path. I'll let Kentucker go into his.
Well, yeah, Albert has a more conventional horror freak kind of backstory. I was on the other end of the spectrum, which was desperately trying to avoid horror movies at all costs for very many years because I was too scared. I feel like my introduction to horror was just like resisting movies that I thought would be too scary. One of the early ones so I didn't get into the 80s, and I was a little later to the game, even though I'm the same age as Al. I feel like movies like Arachnophobia, which I think is a really corny, bad movie, but like just the idea of spiders.
Oh, it's Terry's Scarred for Life pick. When we started this podcast, really? That was his movie that scarred him for life. Like Terry is deathly afraid of spiders, which will probably come up when we talk about your movie. Text me last night.
Have not seen the film. Terrified by it. I can't get it.
Oh, you haven't seen it?
No, so this one I'm saying, like, I can't watch these movies. My terror revolves entirely around the prospect of what happens when I watch this movie and like how to avoid seeing it. Another weird one I just thought of, it's a little bit later, but like, and it's not even a horror movie in traditional circles, I don't think, but this movie called The Good Son with Macaulay Culkin.
We just talked about that on the podcast with Devin Das, the co-writer of Keeping Company. That was his moment. That was his movie.
That movie ruined my life.
Did it really? Okay. All right. So it's in the canon of this podcast. Okay. I was like, I did actually end up seeing that one, and I would say I was quite scarred. Did you ever see that, Al?
Oh yeah, I saw it. And when they throw like the fake dummy off of the overpass, never forget that. That's
yeah.
That's burned.
I think about that every time I'm driving. Like an overpass, I'm like,
oh shit,
a kid is gonna throw a fucking dummy off of it. It's still in my brain. Like so many years later, it's still ingrained in my brain as a possibility.
And I also remember I don't remember much. I remember 3 scenes. The overpass, there's a scene on the ice when someone goes under the ice, and then the end when she's got both of them, one in each hand on the cliff, and she's got to choose which one she's going to like rescue. That's a scary one. But I think Kentucky, I think what's missing in your story is you didn't have that formative moment as a 4-year-old, walking by a doorway. If someone had been watching like Arachnophobia, you might have seen it, and it might have, kind of broken you in, and then you'd been like ready to see more.
Maybe I did. That did happen, and I blocked it out, and I just I sort of try to get away from that feeling for the rest of my life. But yeah. I would say like movies like there's certain movies that we talked a lot about that were influential to start to mention that aren't horror films. They're more fantasy, but they're moments that I actually am scarred by, like The Never-Ending Story and the movie that we're here to talk about, where there's some moments that were very horrific to me. Definitely. That like I saw when I was really young, and those sort of like, okay, I've had enough. But I guess as I got a little bit older and I started watch like more mature movies, I think I wanted to avoid like gory slasher movies and things like that, but I really loved tense atmospheres and feelings of dread and psychedelics kind of stuff. And when I started to get into a little bit more like of the art house feelings, I was really scared and scarred by Clockwork Orange and David Lynch films, Eraserhead and like Rosemary's Baby was one that also comes to mind, of like something that as I got a little older, I started to dip my toe into the world of scare. And then, there was simultaneously like the pop culture scary films that we were being exposed to, like Scream and a little bit later, like the Blair Witch Project, which was like, those were Scream kind of in a fun, scary way, and then Blair Witch in sort of like a haunting way. But I think I was a little bit too old to like really. I know my wife talks about Blair Witch as if like that fucking just, she thought it was real. She watched the whole movie. She thought the like little complimentary piece they put on TV of like the backstory behind Scar.
That was me. Yes. That was me. We talked about Blair Witch on the podcast like 2 years ago, I think. And that was my thing, is that that sci-fi docu-series that they aired that I thought was so real. I was like, oh my God, this really happened. We're going to be watching a snuff film. This is horrible. Like I really got caught up into it. So I get that completely.
I remember like growing up a horror like buff, and then seeing Blair Witch, and like it was like the cover of Time magazine, and people were like, this is the scariest movie of all time. I went and I was there with my like horror buddies, and we were just like, that wasn't it, like I think it had been hyped up too much, and it wasn't scary to me. I think I knew that it was just like some people with a camera in the woods of Maryland, and I don't know. I still to this day, like I wish I had fallen under its spell, but I think I just like I had too high expectations of like, what's this scariest movie of all time? Like
I've seen too many of these things, and I think you were a hair too old. Like we were. I think if you were like a couple years younger, maybe you would have got scared the wits out of you.
Yeah.
So Kentucker, you said you weren't like a big horror person, but do you remember the first horror movie you ever saw, or like the first movie that scared you? It doesn't even have to be a horror movie.
I think the first movie that scared me was Never-Ending Story. Okay. And I think it scared me. The moment that I remember the most, I think, is just it's not a horror moment. It's just sort of a desperation moment, and it's the say my name moment, which just felt so like there was so much gravity to this question of whether this kid is going to say this girl's name. And I just remember feeling so scared and tense about this possibility of like losing everything. And I would say that would probably be the first one that comes to mind.
What about you, Al? Do you remember your first like full scare, not just like the clip, but the full scary movie?
I mean, so I rented all the Nightmare on Elm Streets, and I remember watching them in my mom's old bedroom, and I would just be standing watching the movie, and it would become like I would be like walking with the characters. And my favorite was number 4, where as her friends die, she gets their powers. And I started studying like Kung Fu, because I was like, I'm going to also I'm going to learn. And I started lifting weights. I remember being like, an 8-year-old, like lifting these little like 3-pound weights, being like, I've got to get strong now too, because she's getting strong,
Albert, I love hearing that, because like Nightmare on Elm Street is my favorite of the horror franchises, and number 4 is actually, besides the first one, actually my favorite. Like number 4 is just like there's so much to it, and it's so I don't know, the effects in it are so great and goopy. It's my favorite. 4
is the one that I remember just like when I thought of, because 1 is like legitimately scary, and like 1 is obviously like the best, and you can rewatch it every October and it holds up. And 3 is great with Patricia Arquette and Lawrence Fishburne. 2 is, fun for its own other reason. But 4 is the one that like it really hit me at the right age and the right idea. And actually, if you've been to the Museum of Moving Image, they have like the giant sweater where like the heads are coming out of it.
They do?
Yeah, they did as a couple years ago. Last time I was there, they had it, and just standing there in front of it was like, whoa, this is cool. But so I've got to say the Nightmare movies, but I'm also a Never Ending Story kid, big time. And the feelings, the emotions that movie brought out of me as a kid were like life and death. This is such an important battle, and like for the bad guy to be this thing like the nothing that just like is nothing, and it just eats away the land, was such like kind of an interesting concept as a kid, to be just like, oh my God, they're like battling like the opposite of something. It's just like it's a kind of like an abstract idea. And the fact that it's like a kid, who was our age, who was reading the book, and then, he's living in the story. And so, that's another one that, just revisiting every single weekend would watch that.
I don't think Albert and I would be making movies together if we hadn't seen Never Ending Story probably in the same month of our lives.
Yeah.
We were like 6 years old or something.
Yeah, so I was curious because we're going to talk about Strawberry Mansion, but it pulls from a lot of fantasy and some sci-fi and that kind of genre type stuff. Were you both into fantasy growing up? I mean, you've talked about the Never Ending Story and the like, and I mean, the movie we're going to talk about is also fantasy. So was fantasy a big thing in your young childhood?
Yeah, for me, definitely. Not only Never Ending Story, but just like Jim Henson and the Muppets and all of these, Labyrinth was a huge one, for people our age, I think. So, I don't even know if I was like aware that I was into fantasy, other than that, just like those are the movies that I think I would kind of revisit or watch the most, and then as you get a little older, it starts to like, that bleeds into like, Terry Gilliam and, I watched Baron Munchausen, and that was kind of like a gateway of like, oh, wow, this is a kid's movie, but then this person's directed these other movies. And then that leads to like Monty Python, and it kind of like keeps building and spiraling from there. And then you like get older and you realize like, oh my gosh, like Terry Jones, one of the Python members, wrote Labyrinth, and, it's all kind of connected in this, big mixing pot. But, I'd say I was a fantasy head.
Yeah, I would say not so. I mean, I think I was just kind of exposed to the movies of the day more than anything. Sort of like what was out in theaters, what they told us to watch in the pop cultures. I mean, I feel like I saw, a lot of like Arnold Schwarzenegger, Jim Carrey, like just I didn't really know what movies were, and I didn't really have a sense of like my taste at that age. I was just sort of like consumed what they were feeding me. The one movie, it's not a fantasy movie at all, but the one movie I think I really resonated with, like before I was 10 years old, was this BMX racing movie called Rad that I think I've watched about 1,000 times. That was probably my favorite movie until I was like 10 years old. But I don't know. It's kind of a hodgepodge of some, some fantasy movies, just, accidentally, some like just a lot of comedies. I really love funny stuff. And like just teen boy action movies.
Cool.
Yeah.
But so Kentucker, you said you were scared of movies as a kid.
Yeah.
Albert, were you a scaredy cat too?
Like you mean scaredy cat with movies or just like in life? Because Kentucker was a scaredy cat in life. No, I'm just kidding. I'm not. First of all, I'm not. No, I don't know. I think it was kind of like going back to being that like 4-year-old kid standing in the doorway. It's like this thing was scaring me, but I didn't want to turn away. Like maybe I was more like drawn to it in a way where I was like, if I can watch this, if I can like see it, then I can have some kind of control over it. And if I'm not watching it, then it'll be scarier to me or something. Or like, if I watch it, it's just like, a movie and then it's over. And I did it. But I did not like, like I loved the same, I love bloody horror movies. I loved the Arnold Schwarzenegger movies. Like Predator was my favorite film. Some days if I'm in the right mood, I'll still say that's my favorite movie just because I think I can watch it over and over again. It just had its 35th anniversary a couple days ago too.
Oh yeah, it did.
But I did not like blood in real life. It's like my sister got a bloody nose and I was like, I almost fainted, when I was a kid. So it's like, I don't know, something about the screen, it wasn't real, or it was like removed enough that I could like get close to it and then still be okay and not afraid or something.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So now as adults, do horror movies still scare you at all, or are you desensitized by them now, seeing so many, or how do you handle horror movies as an adult?
Yeah, I'm kind of the same. I don't really seek them out because but I think there's certain types of horror movies that I think that I gravitate towards, and I think they're more psychological and more atmosphere based, and also movies like that are like have incredible performances or incredible visuals, things that are like a little bit disconnected from the horror tropes. Like a movie like Possession or something that's just like I don't know if people call that a horror movie, but it's horrific, it's bloody, it's full of terror in a way, but it's also built around a relationship and real human dynamics.
It's a really good example of divorce horror, which is something someone did online. They called it divorce horror. I'm like, what an incredible way to describe Possession as a divorce horror movie.
Divorce, yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is.
Yeah, but it's in this, like within these all these filters of that are really terrorizing. But yeah, then a movie called like the Japanese House movie that I recently saw.
Yeah.
That's like, I hadn't seen that. I had never seen it, and it's like this classic Gonzo, everything against the kitchen, everything in the kitchen sink, whatever the phrase is, but it's very like lighthearted and fun and funny. Yeah, so I mean, those kind of movies are like that are based in visuals or tone or like some sort of different thing that they're bringing to the table. I love that kind of stuff, and I also love stuff that feels like just slightly off somehow. Like I loved Twilight Zone, and that's one that's kind of stuck with me throughout the years. That I kind of early in my 20s, I started to understand this feeling of like something slightly off, but you can't really put your finger on it. So that kind of stuff I feel like is in the horror world in some ways, but that I still really gravitate towards.
For like where I'm at with like horror. Well, first off, I don't like watching it alone. Like it's not like if I'm by myself, I'm not thrown on. Like I don't want to get scared. But with a friend or a couple, it's just like the best. Especially like October 1st rolls around, and that's just like it's so deep in my DNA of like I got to start watching some horror movies this month. Like this is new ones, old ones, whatever. Try to watch a bunch in October. But yeah, usually it's just like if you start like hearing the reviews or the hype around a new one, then that gets me interested and excited to go check it out in the theater or, watch it at home with some friends.
Albert and I are different in that if he hears hype, he wants to be a part of that hype. If I hear somebody hyping up a movie, I have to wait at least 5 years to watch it because I know I'll hate it. If it's just all about the hype.
That's why we're a good team. We have, like I like horror, he doesn't. I like hype, he doesn't.
He likes to be a part of things. I like to be an outsider. That if you want to get to the root of why, but yeah, here you have it.
Okay, so talking about Strawberry Mansion, which I will say has some elements of horror in it. There's one sequence in it where the character's looking in a mirror and his face it reminded me a bit of Poltergeist, to be honest, of the face sort of like melting in the mirror. So there are elements of horror in this, but can you tell our listeners a little bit about what Strawberry Mansion is?
Yeah, it's about 90 minutes.
PG-13.
Yeah, PG-13. It's funny because they're before we tell about what it is, just going into the horror aspect of it. There's like early versions of it in script and in our heads where it was like way more like a horror movie. And then, as you like do rewrites and you kind of change things here and there and like the years start adding up, it starts to turn into something else. But I mean, there's still, I still would love to make like a 100% horror film someday. I think that'd be a fun challenge. But yeah, it's a movie about dreams and romance and kind of like finding your true self. Takes place in a future world where dreams are recorded and taxed by the government. Yeah, it's it kind of inspired by all these movies. We've been talking about all these ideas when you're a kid and you kind of go into a video store on a Friday night and you have like thousands of options ahead of you and a feeling of like just escape that you can, that movies can give you as a kid. It was a kind of movie, really inspired by that feeling.
You both have collaborated together in the past. And so how did this movie come to be? Like, did one of you have the idea and kind of bring it to the other, or is it kind of like a joint kind of experience? What was that like?
Yeah, this was a story that Albert had cooked up many years ago before he knew me. And he had written a script. I guess that is actually how we met, is him reaching out to me with his script and wanting me to act in it. And I didn't really, I thought it was cool somehow, but I didn't really understand it. And I wasn't really acting at the time. So I said like, yeah, maybe. But then then we kind of fell out of touch. And then a couple years later, we were on the same set of an indie film called Funny Bunny. I was acting in, he was on crew. And then we kind of hit it off from there. And then he's like, do you remember that script I sent you? I was like, yeah, oh yeah. And I had a remembrance that there's a really cool central idea in the film, and we really got along. And then we made another movie called Silvio. And then once we had a good experience with that, I was like, well, there's this really big idea in this old script that I wrote. Let's see if we can refine this and put some new life into this one. So then at that point we started working together and reworking the script and building out the world and the characters and coming to a collaboration aspect of it at that point.
Yeah, at the time I remember like the script made sense to me up to a point, but I think it didn't really read that well. It didn't make sense to a lot of people, and it was like I think Tucker was like, yeah, I'll work on it, but I think we should kind of chop up the script a bit and try to find our way through it. And thankful we did that, because a lot of new elements came out of that. But yeah, it was a weird like 14-year period from like moment of conception to like being finished it. Yeah, so I think we're making another one here. We're almost finished writing it, and hoping it gets out a little bit sooner than 14 years. I think we're about a year into it so far.
The low bar, just like
yeah.
How does it feel to have it finally coming out after 14 years?
I mean, it's surreal, because that's a big chunk of your life, and it changed so many times through the years. At one point, maybe like in year 7, I was like I made peace with the fact that it was never going to happen. You kind of you're like, well, that was just the one that got away. And I got other things I'm working on. I got this project Silvio I'm working on, and this and that. And so you kind of, and then it, something kind of is still poking you in the back of your head about it. So you bring it back out. And yeah, at this point, it's definitely a relief, but it's almost like surreal in that it feels like it was many different projects over the years. And you're kind of like, sometimes you still mourn, the horror movie that would have happened if you'd made it like 10 years ago, or maybe like the science fiction one that would have been like 6 years ago. It's like all these different movies that it could have been. So, but you just put that into those ideas or those like kind of forgotten elements into new things, and you change too. So
yeah,
just the mourning of what it could have been if I was not involved.
Yeah, if I, instead of Kentucker, there was 2 emails I sent that day, and the other person said no. Like if they had said yes. I won't name names, but
does it have to be such a horror movie? Or,
Yeah.
Nice.
We could have had like a whole new horror franchise, Strawberry Munchkin 2, 3.
Oh my God.
The new Nightmare on Elm Street.
Albert's going straight to the top if he ever ditches me.
No.
The Blue Demon could be like the new Freddy.
Hey, now we're talking.
I'm telling you.
It's there's another cut of the movie where there's a Blue Demon scene goes on for twice as long, and some say it's a more interesting cut, but well, I'm just teasing. I mean, look,
release the Blue Demon cut.
Don't we have some of that extended footage in the DVD?
We do have some.
I was going to ask if it was in the Blu Ray. Yeah.
There is an extended moment with the Blue Demon on the Blu Ray. And I just say this on the record here on the podcast that I love working with Kentucker, and if I was making a movie without him, it would be bloated and boring and not as Tucker's really good about keeping things moving and cooking and
if I made a movie without you, it would have no mask, no imagination, no excitement, and nothing anybody would want to watch. So it's a great partnership.
Yeah,
you balance each other out.
There's a reason we work together. And
you should see my movies before Albert was in the picture. Entirely in apartments, entirely shot, people talking on couches, very unimaginative. Yeah, we need each other.
Yeah. Well, there's one thing that this movie does have, and it's a lot of imagination. I rewatched it last night in prep, and I was just like taken away by how inventive and colorful it is. I really, although I will say, you have a moment in there that I was like, fuck this movie. And it's because of the spiders. No offense, but I can't do it. I was like, of course there is a fucking spider in this movie.
Yeah. Arachnophobia.
I mean, but we give you the tools to kill the spider.
You do. I want that spider death can. I need that. I need it. Yeah. I literally last night went around my house and was spraying more poison because I saw a little spider after I saw that movie. And it's like, nope, I'm not having you in the house. And I literally ran around my entire house with like a thing of like poison because I was like, no, I can't.
Yeah, that's I have a few extra cans laying around. I'll see if I can get one off to you. It's you'll be disappointed though because I think it's just like some kind of like smoke in there or something. It probably makes a spider stronger.
I will just show it to them and they'll be terrified and run away, and that will be all I need.
That's what we are. It's got a picture of us on the box.
Yeah. Well, yes. Sorry to traumatize you. In our new script, I think as of right now, as of this taping, it's spider free.
Thank God.
Well, now it's going to have spiders in it. Now that we've talked about
it. Maybe,
Mary Beth, no.
Terry, maybe we'll put one real small in there somewhere, and
it'll be named Terry, but like no one knows his name is Terry. We just know that it's little spiders, Terry.
Little Easter egg.
Yeah, while you're at it, just give us a list of what you can't handle for the next movie. We'll just put it through the.
Yeah.
Honestly, that's it. And blood in real life. Like you, Albert. That's I don't like blood in real life. I can watch the gnarliest movies, but the moment someone has blood, I'm like, nope. Can't watch myself get given blood or any of that kind of shit. Nope. Yeah. So I'm with you there.
Definitely.
But so do we want to start chatting about the movie that you guys have brought with you today?
Yes.
So Kentucker and Albert, what movie are we talking about?
Well, we're bringing the iconic classic horror movie, The Wizard of Oz.
Hell yeah. So let me read a quick synopsis of the iconic classic horror movie, The Wizard of Oz. Young Dorothy Gale and her dog Toto are swept away by a tornado from their Kansas farm to the magical land of Oz, and they embark on a quest with 3 new friends to see the wizard who can return her home and fulfill the others' wishes.
Yeah. I mean, that's scary. Getting taken away in a tornado from your home, that's a horror movie right there.
It is
a horror movie.
Yeah.
All right, so take us back to the very beginning. How old were both of you when you saw this movie? What about it scared you? Give us your horror story. We want to hear it all.
Yeah. This is one of those ones where it's like, the movies we talked about, the other ones, there's very like concrete memories, but this is one of those ones that just feels like you always have seen it. Like, I don't remember the first time really. It's just like it was on TV or it was, a VHS somewhere. It just feels like it was always there. Yeah. Can you remember Kentucky?
No, it's the same thing with me. I don't remember when I saw it. I just remember being. I mean, I think the first moment of being scarred and terrorized by the film was the flying monkeys, and I think like that was probably one of the first moments in my life where I was just. I love this image of Albert standing up watching movies. And it's like that feeling. I cannot, like, this is not something I can watch sitting down. Like this is too much for me. I have to sort of like work this out with my body, and it's sort of that gives you better flexibility to turn away. But yeah, the flying monkeys were really I don't know what it about them. I mean, I think the witch obviously was also very scary, but when you hit the flying monkeys and the shrieking witch together, like it was game over for me.
Yeah.
Well, the flying monkeys are just like uncanny valley too because of the costumes. Like it's not, it's like a monkey, but you obviously know it's a dude in a costume, and it's just like that weird kind of divide.
Yeah. Well, like the whole movie up to that point has created such like this feeling of like the magical sets, you know, like the colors of the it's like painted backdrops, you know, and then there's like it's just the whole movie, like you're under a spell. So you know that this is like a character in a Tin Man outfit, or this is an actor in a lion's costume, and you get all these like you're just kind of along with these songs and this fun, these visuals, and then all of a sudden with like the witch who starts showing up, she is kind of like I mean there's no the fact that we have a witch in Starry Mansion, it's like 100%, you know, probably inspired by the witch in that. It's like when you're a kid, what's scary, you know, the things that scare you are these like archetypes of like the big bad wolf or the wicked witch. And so you've got this witch, this iconic, you know, kind of like, you know, like cackling voice, and I'll get you, my pretty. And then her little henchmen show up, and they are up to that point. You're like, you haven't seen anything like them in the movie, and they just have those kind of like blank faces where they're kind of like just staring, and the idea that they're just gonna like fly out the window, and they're you know, even the whole sequence where they lead up to her place through the woods, you know, dark woods, and it's like really kind of like the deep dark woods, and
it's a little uncanny. Like they see the owls in the tree, and they almost look a little robotic with the red eyes and everything. And then there's like, I think there's vultures in another tree. It kind of gives it builds up on this moment. And then like you, when I was rewatching this now, I was like, wow, you see a couple monkeys jump out the window, but then the sky is full of, you know, the screen is just full of these monkeys, and they just sort of like descend upon them like a flock and just take her, fly away. It's like it's horrifying. They rip Scarecrow apart, like through his legs, through his stomach, everywhere. It's like it's horrifying when you really think about it.
Totally. That's like some early body horror right there, you know, like just disemboweling this character. And yeah, I don't know. I think,
and then the guards and the castle, it just sort of feels like this life and death thing of like, if you get caught here, like this is like there's no recovering from this. Like it just feels like it feels like this is there's so much tension, there's so much excitement around this idea of finding your way past these guards and past these monkeys, and it's just like, man, it's so scary to a kid.
And I love that both David Lynch and John Waters both cite this as their favorite movie of all time, and those are both, you know, kind of like the, I don't know, forefathers of midnight movies who have both like dabbled in the horror genre in their own ways, you know, but both of them who make very different films, both citing this as their favorite film, I think says so much about the power of the movie and just how it, like, you know, what is it, made 1939. And it still feels like it's from the future. You know, it's like so, it's so timeless. The way that they filmed it, the costumes, the sets, the music, everything about it. You know, most movies like from 4 years ago feel dated, but this movie from 1939 still feels like some weird, like it piped in from an alien civilization from the future or something, you know?
I'll say that rewatching this as an adult, the opening scene with the tornado effects, though, that's actually really effective. And it holds up to today. Like I was like staring at this going, how is this movie from 1939 looking better with their tornado effects than movies that have come out since? Like it surprised me of how effective just the set, and then I'm guessing it's like a screen in the back that is, you know, projecting the image, but like how effective the whole thing just sort of comes together to be a really kind of intense tornado scene from 1939.
So it's incredible. I hadn't watched it in years, you know, and then I watched it at Christmas with my whole family, maybe 2 or 3 years ago. Kind of like, is this still going to get me like it used to? And I was right there. And after that, I was like, this is an all timer, you know, like this isn't just a movie that you watch as a kid and kind of like forget about. This holds up. This is, you know, as a middle-aged human being, I'm right there feeling it, loving it. And to see my niece and nephew, you know, like 4 or 5 years old, kind of seeing it for the first time, it's like just a small timer.
Did they like it too?
Oh yeah, the older one definitely. I think he was like this the perfect age to kind of like get lost in it, and you know, maybe it's not as scary as it used to be. He wasn't as freaked out by the witch or the monkeys as I thought maybe he would have been. You know, it's like nowadays
I've seen a lot these days, these kids.
Yeah.
I remember there's a really weird spot that terrified me as a kid. And it was at the beginning before the tornado with the pigs, when she falls into the pig pen. And that freaked me out immediately. I think it was just, and I think when I first saw this, I don't, like you said, I don't remember the first time I saw it. It was just on all the time. And like, I just knew about it. But I remember thinking, and not knowing that it was going to be color, I didn't really know what it was about. So I was like, oh my God, it's just going to be these horrible, horrible things on the farm. Like it's going to be black and white. And like, I don't know how old I was. I just remember that feeling of being like, what is this? Like, this is horrifying. And then it becoming obviously like the beautiful world of, but it still kind of freaked me out a little bit. Because the whole concept freaked me out of like leaving, like being taken from your home and put into this place and you can't find your way home. And there's witches all of a sudden and like little people in these beautiful costumes and a talking like Tin Man and a scarecrow and a lion. And it's like, it was overwhelming to me as a child. I loved it, but it was overwhelming. But Toto was always my favorite character. To the point of that I played Toto in the school play in kindergarten when I was a child and had a tail and everything and was so excited to play Toto because I didn't want speaking part, but I wanted to play the dog. So I played Toto in this.
You're like in every scene, but you don't have to memorize any lines.
Exactly. All I had to do was walk on the yellow brick road that they put in the middle of the classroom.
In the middle of all the action. No responsibility.
I was. None. Like it was great. It was the perfect acting role for me.
I can hear it. Yeah, I hear you.
Yeah, Tucker, that's like you say you always like the days where you just like sleep on set, like your character is asleep in a bed.
Yeah, I don't like having to talk. Yeah, it's fun to just like walk in a room or lay in a bed. Yeah, but yeah, I think go like revisiting the movie as an adult. It really is. It hits different. It's like pretty much the only things I remember as a kid were the scary moments, were the moments of like, abject horror of like feeling these things for the first time. And then going back and watching it a couple of years ago, I feel like you see the film for kind of the other part of it, which is just like a colorful musical. And it's really funny. And of course, the production design and the colors and the effects with the tornado and very convincing and really just so thoughtful and beautifully presented. And also just like, like the existential quest really resonates as an older person. And like these desires that these characters are seeking, heart and brain and courage, and thinking like, these are real things, as a kid, you don't even put that together. Like those are things that people strive for in their life. And those things really, I think that's why it's a classic that will always be one of the greatest films, is because it's so simple, but it really taps into so many different things and so many different layers. And yeah, I think it's a beautiful film.
I mean, just there's no place like home. It's like, how can you ever get a better thought than that? It's like that's the biggest, best idea of all time. Just there's no place like home. Like, yep. There is no place like home. That's it.
Well, and you can say No Place Like Home, which is obviously an incredible concept. Then we have Somewhere Over the Rainbow, which is a song, obviously. But like that song, I mean, we all like basically know the words to most of it. I feel like it's just kind of, again, ingrained in our brains. But Judy Garland is incredible. And like her voice is so beautiful. And that's something I totally like when rewatching it, just like the power of her voice singing Somewhere Over the Rainbow at the beginning of the movie. I was like, holy shit, wow, this is really much more impactful when you're an adult and you have like context. Yeah. And then I'm like, wait, I want to go somewhere over the rainbow.
Yeah, take me. I'll sign up. I want to go down, And she just, I believe her 100th birthday was just a couple days ago. So happy birthday, Judy.
Yeah. And here's another weird coincidence that, I think, first of all, I think that it's perfect that you picked this movie over Pride. Like this movie is very gay. Yeah. And Somewhere Over the Rainbow is a song that is like before I even had words to talk about my sexuality, was like, there was something about it that just spoke to me without even knowing or having the vocabulary for it. And, as an adult rewatching, it's like, I see why this, resonates, because it's about like a place where you won't get into trouble. And for gay men and queer people living in that time, that was like a struggle. I mean, it's still a struggle today in a lot of places, but like, it was a song that I think speaks to outsiders in general, but I think for the queer community in particular, it speaks a lot to it. And honestly, Judy Garland, this episode is going to drop on the anniversary of her funeral.
Wow.
How weird is that?
That gave me goosebumps.
Isn't that weird? Terry texted that to me, and I was like, what a weird, like, synchronicity, coincidence, how everyone, right?
I mean, I believe that kind of stuff, it's like, that's special, because, I mean, just being a kid and not even, feeling kind of like different or an outsider, but watching that movie and feeling, just like a feeling of home, and like you can find people along the way that'll be your companions and your friends that can travel with you on this road. And I think it's a universal thing that we can all relate to when we're, all growing up in different places and different times. And it's, I love that it's still speaking to people today, and that it's going to drop on her anniversary of her funeral. That's incredible.
So when I was looking up Judy Garland, because Judy Garland, she's a gay icon. Yeah. And when I was looking up information on her, so there is like, I don't know, it might be just an urban legend or a rumor, but there's like a story that her funeral happened on the 27th when this episode's dropping. And then early in the morning of June 28th is when the riots happened at Stonewall. And a lot of people at Stonewall were obviously huge fans of Judy. They had actually, some of them come from her funeral, and they go to this place, and they're like, there's something in the air that something's just going to happen tonight. And Stonewall was a place that didn't have a liquor license, so they were called a bottle bar, and a lot of people had to use pseudonyms, particularly for safety for queer people. And so the pseudonyms that were used an awful lot were Judy Garland. And so then her funeral happened on the 27th, and then the early mornings of the 28th is when the Stonewall riots happened. And so there's that aspect of it. And then also, like you had mentioned John Waters earlier, and he had talked about seeing this as a kid. And I have a quote from him. He said, "I was the only child in the audience that always wondered why Dorothy ever wanted to go back to Kansas. Why would she want to go back to Kansas in this dreary black and white farm with an aunt who dressed badly and seemed mean to me, when she could live with magic shoes, winged monkeys, and gay lions? I never understood it." And I love that. I love that quote.
Totally. That's amazing. We made the movie in Baltimore, and obviously like John is a huge inspiration growing up here. Like I went to, as a 17-year-old, I went to the set of Cecil B. Demented, and
oh wow,
and walked in, and I was in a film class at the time in high school, and I was like really excited to finally get in this film class. And we walked in, and we were wearing ties. We were out for this like special thing, and John said, "Who let these choir boys in on set?" And and it was like the most amazing thing to be like, wow, John Waters just like gave us a little dig there. But he's still around, and he watched Strawberry Mansion. I think I can say this. He called me afterwards, and one of the first things he said he loved it, and it was like a fucked up children's movie. And that was like such an amazing moment to be like, wow, John Waters.
Wait, also got a call from John Waters. Like, that's cool as shit.
Yeah, well, Baltimore is small enough that I think
it is. Yeah.
It's you can run into each other at certain film events, and he's just a great supporter of Baltimore and the film scene here. So
he is. Baltimore.
We love it. We love it, and
we love Baltimore.
Yeah, that's it. I love that quote. It's true. It's like why do you want to get back to that boring black and white Kansas when you kind of
that's what I thought when I was watching this movie too. I was like, I like you both, I think. I don't remember exactly when I saw this movie originally when I was a kid. I think it'd always been like maybe a part of my subconscious. I probably saw it when I was very, very, very young, and it was like a favorite that I would watch, but I have not, until last night, had not revisited this film probably since I was a kid. And there were some things that I had forgotten. Speaking of the black and white thing, I thought it was stark black and white when it's actually in sepia tone.
Right.
And so that was
right. Yeah.
It like even gives it kind of a more muddier like presentation to it that really pops when the color pops in. It just gives it a sort of like why would you want to go back to that?
Yeah, that's the one flaw of the film, I guess.
But as I got older and I started getting interested in like how they make this movie, and there's so much written about it and so many things you can look up. But that iconic scene when it goes to sepia to color, I think is so cool because they actually painted the inside of the cabin sepia. They painted another actress sepia. So when it's Dorothy opening the door, it's not actually Judy Garland. She opens the door and kind of the camera moves forward as a sepia actress leaves the frame. As the camera's moving forward, our actual Judy Garland in color walks up, and it's ingenious, all in camera. And so as like a filmmaking exercise, I mean, just like if you're interested in how they make these movies, like also all like the matte paintings, when they're going down the yellow brick road and you've got the Emerald City in the background, and you can see like as an adult watching really big, it's fun to try to see where does like the flowers end and like the painting begin, but it's just so magical that it's still, it works. It's like the perfect kind of like, it's a stage play, it's a movie, it's a musical, it got some horror elements, it's funny, it's got a heart, you got these iconic characters, the Cowardly Lion, the Tin Man, the Scarecrow. Yeah, it's just an all-timer.
Did you guys ever hear the urban legend about Wizard of Oz with the guy who hanged himself in the background? Yep. And I feel like most of us have heard this. Because when I heard that as a kid, every time I watched the movie, I'd pause it and look for it. Because I was a fucking weird, macabre little fucker who was like, so into it. And was like, oh, someone hanged himself. It's so cursed. Wizard of Oz is cursed. And I thought that was even cooler. Yeah. That is not true. According to the internet. And everything, it's like, I don't think, is there a definitive answer though? I don't know if there's a definitive.
I think the thing that people think they're seeing, there's these like birds walking around in the background. Yeah, I believe it's because I also was that person, like, this is before the internet was really like what it is today. Oh yeah, you couldn't find out. The other one I think about is 3 Men and a Baby, the ghost in the window. Oh yes. Yeah, and then it was actually just like a Ted Danson cutout that was off. But as a kid, you're like, Wizard of Oz, someone hung themselves. The little boy who killed themselves with a BB gun by accident in 3 Men and a Baby still haunts the apartment, and it's like, it becomes this like legend around these movies.
Yeah. So there were some movies that were like, we're not sure, but yeah, I think it was like a peacock or one of like apparently they rented, like you said, a ton of birds and some of them escaped and were just like around set. But like that gave the Wizard of Oz such a weird vibe to me too. Like for the longest time, like I believed it for a very long time. Again, when the internet became more of a thing and you could look it up, but like that always freaked me out that like this cute kids movie had this like, and it's pretty obvious in the background too. Like it's not too difficult to see. And I always remember looking out for that when I was younger. And they'd be like, look, it's the guy hanging himself in the background. And my mom was like, stop doing that. Like, what is wrong with you?
Yeah. It was also like the VHS tapes you were watching were like, degraded quality and they weren't very clear. And the TVs were, smaller. Nowadays you got your Blu Ray and your flat screen and it's like, oh yeah, that's totally what it is.
Yeah. Well, and apparently, like, there were some crazy stories from, like, the production of this movie, too. Like, Judy Garland was not treated well on set, apparently.
Diet pills and speed.
Yeah, it was diet pills and speed. Yeah, she was 16, and they had her on diet pills and speed to help her self-image and, like, help her get through filming, which apparently actually led to her attempting suicide a couple of years later.
Yeah.
It's dark. And then, apparently some of the actors who played the Munchkins were like very rowdy and drank a lot in the hotel room afterward. And
there were some stories of like orgies with the Munchkins. Yeah, and I think a lot of them were, they were like bussed into LA. They were kind of like, this was this exciting time, but I don't think a lot of them had ever seen so many people like themselves, and so it was this really kind of like rowdy community that was happening behind the scenes. Yeah, there's a whole movie about that. I think like a documentary just about what was going on with them.
Oh wow!
Yeah, I haven't seen it.
Margaret Hamilton, who played Wicked Witch of the West, suffered really bad burns. She got 2nd and 3rd degree burns on her face and hands. Would no longer work with fire after that, and then her stunt double was on like the broomstick, and it fucking exploded and burned her legs.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so like this movie is like so iconic, but also like trouble. I haven't seen the documentary. I want to see that, but like very troubled production history.
Also, not to mention the original actor playing the Tin Man had to stop because he got poisoned by the makeup.
He did,
oh, that's right.
He got in his eyes,
And then the replacement, I forget his name, but they put on some kind of powder underneath, like in between. But it wasn't. They still used the poisonous makeup. It just like wasn't quite as bad, but he still, I think, was feeling pretty sick. Like it wasn't,
the guy who played the original Tin Man, I'm looking this up, was in an iron lung. He had to go into an iron lung because the aluminum powder got into his lungs.
Yeah.
Holy cow.
I mean, and then it's like it creates this iconic thing, and you start saying, is it worth it? I mean, it's like, it makes you think of like Tarkovsky and the crew of Stalker, it's
yes.
Like they make this incredible iconic movie that is one of another top 10 of all time, but within 10 years most of them were dead from like radiation poisoning.
Jeez.
And cancers.
The things we do for art,
right? It's like hopefully we're moving into an era maybe where it's like we can have great movies and also not hurt ourselves in the process, but I mean, not that we got like need to go in an iron lung or anything, but making Strawberry Mansion is tough. We had mornings where we were like, questioning what we were doing and our questioning our roles in the universe, and is this going to be anything? And
lots of existential struggles of the mind, but that's sort of par for the course. I think that's before the movie, during the movie, after the movie. That's where my head is.
Yeah,
and I think that's a lot of what our next movie's about. It's just like sort of trying to understand your purpose on the planet, and trying to understand how you fit in, what you can provide, what the identity that you bring to the world, and how that relates to other people and or doesn't. Let's look forward to the next project, but.
Ooh.
Yeah. It's funny though that you bring up that the woman that played the witch had burns, because I rewound and replayed her introduction in the Munchkin City, where like there's smoke and then she appears, because that's a really well done. I realized watching it after playing it that she's coming up out of the ground, but the way that it's edited is so perfect, and then she goes back down. There's a burst of flame, and I'm like, how did they do that without her getting hurt? Because that is like almost instant.
Yeah.
And there we go.
There we go. Burns on her body.
Burns on her body.
What if we don't care if she gets hurt? Oh, we can get rid of it then.
It's like, but it might hurt her. It's like, well, this movie's going to be around for another 100 years, and people are going to love it and talk about it on podcasts many years from now. So it's worth it.
There you go.
Podcasts? 1903. And they're like, the fuck are you talking?
Yeah.
I did have a very weird observation on this watch in the Munchkin City.
Mm-hmm.
When there's like a shot and they're walking through the city and everything, and there is a shot of this nest, shall we say? I think it's a nest, and it has eggs, and the baby munchkins are sleeping in it. And I'm like, okay, one, is this how munchkins are born in this world, out of like eggs, because it's in a nest? Or two, did they kill giant birds and then harvest their eggs and are now sleeping in their eggs? Because it is literally kids waking up out of these eggs, and I'm like, how are munchkins birthed? Because it was actually kind of terrifying to me, and it made me go like, how do these munchkins reproduce? Because that's terrifying.
Great questions.
You're welcome for that.
The very important questions about the lore Wizard of Oz. How are munchkins born? They look like humans, but who the fuck knows?
Babies are sleeping in eggs.
Yeah. I mean,
there's been a lot of discussion about this film throughout the years, but I think maybe this one needs a little bit more exploration.
Yeah.
I think so too.
Yeah.
Have you read the book? Have any of you guys read the book?
Nope.
No.
I never read it either. It's like a whole, isn't it a whole series of books?
It's a whole series. My mom has all her original, she loved it as a kid, and she still has them. And actually, who wrote it? Was it Franco Baum or something? Or something like that.
I almost said Frank Oz. What's wrong with me?
Yeah, Frankie Oz. But he spent some time in Ithaca. I think he might have gone to Cornell or had some kind of Ithaca connection upstate New York. I have a friend who lives up there, and there was these yellow bricks. Part of the main street was yellow bricks, and they were tearing it up a couple of years ago. And she said, "Hey, I know you love this movie. You want a couple of these bricks?" And I got a couple, and I gave one to my mom because they were the yellow bricks that he saw as like a teenager in Ithaca that I think kind of inspired. So I mean, it's like, yeah, they were just yellow bricks he saw as a kid, but to me, it's like that's where the
yellow brick road.
And I got one downstairs. It's like the doorstop. When you open our door, it keeps the door from closing. And every day, I'm like, there's a yellow brick right there. So
that's so cool.
I haven't read the books, but I saw the sequel, the Walter Murch, Fairuza Balk, Return to Oz.
Return to Oz, which is horrifying in its own way.
Is on your list. I saw that was on your list because that's a traumatic film. I saw Walter Murch speak like years ago, and I think that was maybe his only directorial movie. He's a great editor and sound designer and all these things, but he was talking about it, and it's really interesting because he, I think, wanted to make this iconic sequel to one of the most iconic movies of all time, and I think instead it just kind of became this movie that like we all saw as kids, and just like we saw it once because it was so weird and like everything was different and off. Like Dorothy doesn't look like Dorothy. The Tin Man is a whole different design. I think he was being a little truer to like the books.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That movie is. Yeah.
I do want to talk very briefly about the Wicked Witch of the West because she feels like I think she's an iconic design for a witch. I have a feeling that has sort of like informed how we look at the witch since then with the green face. And I don't know if this was like something that existed beforehand, but like whenever I think of a witch and I think of the iconic design, I think of this witch from this movie. And, she really kind of is a drag queen in her own right. She, has all these iconic lines. She's throwing fireballs and disses. She loves a dramatic entrance. And water is her weakness. I mean, you throw water on a drag queen and the makeup starts to melt, they're out. And you throw water on her and she just melts. Like this is drag queen from the very beginning. Like this movie, I'm sorry, this movie is so gay. I love it. I've lost Mary Beth.
Water on a drag queen and she'll start to melt.
She will.
True. But it's just really funny. I've never thought of that comparison before.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that might be the first drag queen right there.
There you go.
Yeah.
I love the design of her, and I do think she's actually kind of terrifying.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think there's something very uncanny about this movie. And I think that when I was thinking back to when I saw it as a kid, 'cause I remember being kind of scared about this movie too as a kid. And I think it was the way things don't feel real. Like from the very beginning, when the house falls on the Wicked Witch of the East and you see her legs basically sticking out from under the house, and they end up like rolling up and going inside. It's like, that's not how legs work. And so there's like this idea of this uncanniness that continues throughout the entire movie, from the kind of robotic looking bird sitting in the trees to the witch, to the way everything looks like it's on a stage production. Like there's a feeling of artifice here that I, as a kid, I don't know, both like spoke to, my imagination, but also kind of slightly terrified me because it doesn't feel real.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. It's like probably most children's like first kind of like dipping their toe into like surrealism and, that exact feeling of like, I've never seen anything like this. It's exciting and also a little scary. It's like a cartoon that comes to life. It's like the way that the legs peel up, or like a talking lion and Tin Man, and the way they move and the way they dance. And, it's like a merry melody, or like some kind of, cartoon that's come to life. And the horse that changes colors every scene, it's very trippy and psychedelic too. It's like there's no wonder that like people started putting Pink Floyd, Dark Side of the Moon to it, because it's like you can really kind of go on a little trip with it, stoned or not.
I am also curious, did this movie influence either of you at all while you were making Strawberry Mansion? Because I don't know, there seems to be like, watching both back to back last night, just, I don't know, it felt like a perfect companion piece to this movie.
Wait, did you watch, which one did you watch first?
I watched your movie first.
Okay, cool. Yeah, when we start syncing them up, we'll have to like figure out which one pairs better, first or second. But
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Influenced. I mean, there are some very direct visual homages, like the bubble, the pink bubble that comes down at one of the later scenes in our film, and the witch, of course. I think we, like you said, I think it's a very defining kind of representation of a witch that I think we kind of stayed true to that version of what a witch looks like. And just the costumes and the the archetypes of a fable and fairy tale of that ilk.
And I think with Connie, she even mentioned Margaret Hamilton. I think she may have done a play with her years ago, or there was some kind of, I think she had met her at some point. So it felt like Connie, who played the witch, who played Martha in The Witch in our movie. He was definitely kind of like it's like the iconic performance. So it's kind of like, when there's a whole other scene that you can see on the Blu Ray as well with the witch in our movie. And in that scene, you'll really, I think, see like the Margaret Hamilton kind of coming out of like the cackling and the like, oh, I'll get you,
Cool.
But yeah. And then the pink bubble that comes down that Bella and Preble float away. And I think I even like took a screen cap of the pink bubble from Wizard of Oz and then used that as like our reference for our VFX person to like, just make this, like, can you just make this exact pink bubble? Because it's like, what's cooler than that? Like a bubble coming down with someone in it and then like going away with them. I think we were like stuck in the script, like, well, what's going to happen here? And it was like, we had this whole elaborate setup with this like conveyor belt and then it turns into a rocket. And it's just like,
oh, wow.
It's just like too much.
Yeah.
And then it's like, all we need is the bubble, like just steal from Wizard of Oz. Like that's perfect. I think Lynch did the same thing at the end of Wild at Heart. He's got the bubble comes down with the good witch in it. So yeah. When in doubt, just like, steal from your favorite movies.
Exactly.
Yeah. So do we want to wrap up and give us a rating out of 5?
Sounds like a plan.
All right, Terry, starting off with you. How many flying monkeys out of 5 do you give The Wizard of Oz?
I think this movie is iconic. I think when you think about how it was made in 1939 and the sort of technical prowess that went into it, the acting is really good. I love the actors that play each of the men that she meets along the way, the Scarecrow, the Tin Man. They have such physicality to them that it really feels they embody the characters so well. I think I do have one thing that I thought was really funny. This movie speaks a lot to the gay in me as a gay man. But the idea, so there's I don't know how like known this is, but like back in like the early days, the gay slang was friend of Dorothy, and that was a gay man, and it was like a term that people would use to refer to them without having to say gay or to like hide it. And in the late 70s and early 80s, the Naval Investigative Service was investigating homosexuality in the Chicago area. And agents discovered that gay men would refer to themselves as friends of Dorothy. And unaware of the historical meaning of the term, they believed that there was actually a woman named Dorothy at the center of a massive ring of homosexual military personnel. And they launched an enormous and futile hunt for this elusive Dorothy, hoping to find her and convince her to reveal the names of the gay service members. Like,
amazing.
What? But yeah, so like this movie
the
is
U.S. government at work. Everybody.
I know. And who is this Dorothy?
anything that can like mess with the government like that is just the best.
That's
like
fucking incredible. I didn't know that.
It's amazing. Yeah, it's amazing. And so I can't give this movie anything less than 5 flying monkeys for myself. It's iconic. It's so well produced, and it's everlasting. It's timeless. So what about you, Mary Beth? How many? I
mean, how can I fucking top that? 5 flying monkeys out of 5. This movie has been in my brain since before I can remember. It's just gorgeous, and I'll love it no matter what. And it's cursed a little bit, which makes it even cooler to me. And I wanted to be Dorothy, and I also wanted to be the lion, I think, because he had really cool curly hair. And I also saw him as like a very feminine character, which is incredible. And yeah, 5 out of 5 for me. And you guys have the final word. Kentucker, starting with you. How many flying monkeys out of 5 do you give this one?
Yeah, I mean, There's no other rating to be giving this unless you're a sick person. Flying monkeys. Although I'm a little disturbed by the safety issues here in some of these. So the only thing I would take it down is for the people harmed along the way. But I feel like it was worth it. I don't know. It's hard to say. I don't want to. I'm not. It's iconic, like you said. It's one of the greatest films of all time, with so many different layers and levels, and it's always a guiding post for us, I think. And I think, like Albert said, when in doubt, like, we're coming straight back for Wizard of Oz for influence, inspiration.
Yeah. And I got my dog named Dorothy, so I think that says it all where I'm coming from.
Sure does.
So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to give it 5 flying monkeys. But the only thing about flying monkeys is they start swarming. So now we got 6, now we got 7.
Oh my God, there's so many flying monkeys.
It's going to keep going up. And so it's going to, before you know it, it's like, I'm going to give it 100 flying monkeys. That's where I'm at.
Okay.
There you go.
Totally broke the mold. And
I like that.
Well, thank you both, Kentucker and Albert, for bringing this movie to us and allowing us to talk about it and dropping it on, the anniversary of her funeral. It's an amazing coincidence. But where can our listeners find you, and what do you have coming up that you can share with our listeners?
Yeah, thanks for having us. We're excited. It's been a fun chat. So excited to talk with you. We're on the socials, and I'm at Kentucker Audley on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. Albert's Albert Birney, or simply Silvio on all places. We're making a new movie called Super Delights that we're just finishing our script now, or we're working on a script in the sort of late stages of the script now, and hopefully we'll make that sometime in the next year. And I think it taps in a lot of the same visual landscapes and themes and special effects and otherworldly fantasy elements and some horror elements that we've been tapping into thus far. And so,
it's funny because we've been writing this new screenplay and we're just like really deep in it, and you kind of get lost down this, rabbit hole. And talking about Wizard of Oz today, it made me just like think about, there's a lot of overlap and a lot of like elements of this. And I think it's going to be nice to kind of go through and see what we read thinking about Wizard of Oz. And it's like a lighthouse in the darkness out there that, it's good to revisit and talk about and think about it, because I think it shines very brightly still.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So sorry, my fiance came into the background with holding my cat and was distracting me, and I got it's just like, look, it's the cat. So listeners, you've heard from us. We want to hear from you. What was your experience with The Wizard of Oz? Send us an email at scarredforlifepodcast@gmail.com, or reach out to us directly on Twitter. I am at MB McAndrews.
And I'm McGailey Dreadful.
And of course, don't forget to follow the podcast at Scarred Podcast.
And please don't forget to review, rate, and subscribe.
Thank you to Eric Power for our artwork. Thank you to Sean Keller for our music. Thank you everyone for listening. Please stay safe out there, but most importantly, stay creepy.
And until next time.